My boyfriend guilt-tripped me into buying ridiculously expensive furniture I couldn't afford, then had the nerve to demand I wait on him because he spent more. When I tried to leave, he pinned me down, taking my phone like a thief. My soon-to-be ex-boyfriend, 28M, and I, 25F, had been living together for a few months, having dated for 3 years. We both work full-time, though he earns significantly more than I do, probably around 3 times what I make. However, he's always been vague about his exact income. We split our bills, with him covering roughly 60%, which is still somewhat tight for me, but I've been managing. Unfortunately, I don't have any savings. When we moved in together, we each brought our own belongings. I had my bed, and he had his, along with a couch. Our plan was to use his bed as our main bed because it was larger, with mine going into the guest room. We weren't planning on keeping his couch forever, so we agreed we'd buy a new one later. However, when moving day arrived, he threw out his bed and couch, deciding instead to buy new furniture. He'd had a bedbug scare after visiting his elderly grandmother's home, which he feared he had brought into his apartment. While it wasn't actually a bedbug problem, I understand why he discarded the furniture. What frustrated me, though, is that he knew I couldn't afford to buy new furniture at that moment. He also understood I would need time to save up. He offered to pay for the furniture up front, and I'd reimburse him in installments. He ended up purchasing a very expensive mattress and a brand new couch, and I helped him pick them out. I made it clear several times that, given the cost, it would take a while for me to fully pay him back. Despite this, he went ahead with the purchase anyway. I shared my budget with him, outlining how much I could pay back each month on top of my rent and other bills. Although I recognized that he spent much more than I did, I still felt like I was living beyond my means with this financial arrangement. This situation led to arguments between us, where he would insist I do whatever he wanted because he was so generous with his finances. For instance, after a particularly long week at work, I got home early and was relaxing on the couch when he walked in, went straight to the kitchen, and asked me to make him a snack while rummaging through the fridge. I was irritated because I just wanted to relax, and I didn't understand why he couldn't get it himself since he was already standing at the fridge. I told him no, which upset him greatly. This sparked a massive argument, with him accusing me of being ungrateful for his financial support. He claimed all he wanted was for me to be nice to him. I tried to explain that I wouldn't do everything he asked just because he earned more money. I told him it was unfair for him to use my financial situation as leverage to control me. His response was that I wasn't his equal because I'm a woman and he's a man, and I should just listen to him without any attitude when he made requests. This was incredibly upsetting to me, and I told him I couldn't continue like this and wanted to move out. He kept telling me he could afford to live there without me, so I thought it wouldn't be an issue. There were other reasons I decided to end things, like frequent boundary violations, name-calling, and behavior that bordered on physical abuse. He would often, playfully, pin me to the floor, bite me, grab me, or immobilize me, which I made very clear I didn't find playful at all. These actions would anger me, and I repeatedly told him to stop. Now I'm essentially stuck in the guest bedroom, trying to figure out how to leave. I have no savings, and living with him has drained me financially. The longer I stay, the worse my financial situation gets. I have family, but they're far away, in another state. I can't just leave my job without notice either. I've been looking for affordable places nearby, but it's a tough time of year to find something, and there aren't many options. I'm at a loss about how to get out before it all overwhelms me. Update: 2 days later, I've officially moved out of state. To everyone who pointed out that he was both physically and financially abusive, you were right. The night after I posted this, he came into the spare bedroom where I was sleeping at 1 a.m. He grabbed my phone and stormed off with it. I followed him and tried to get it back, which led to a few minutes of him trying to stop me. Eventually, I retrieved it, but he then began following me around, grabbing my wrists, and attempting to pin me on the floor or bed. He even tried to pick me up and carry me outside the house while I was screaming at him to stop. He continued to follow me downstairs and upstairs as I tried to get back to bed, undressing himself before jumping into bed with me, wrapping himself around me and immobilizing me. He then tried to bite me. In the chaos, I accidentally poked him in the eye while trying to defend myself. I knew I couldn't stay, and I finally left for good. I was desperately trying to push him off me, swinging my arms with everything I had, even though he had me pinned down, holding me with his arms, legs, and the full weight of his body. He didn't stop until I screamed at him, telling him I wanted nothing to do with him and that he should leave me the hell alone. Furious, he got up and said if that's how I felt, I should just get the hell out right then. He then went over to the closet where my clothes were hanging and tried pulling them out. I rushed to stop him, yanking his arm back from the hangers, causing him to stumble and crash into the closet door. He kept shouting that I could leave and find somewhere else to stay or book a hotel. At that point, I was emotionally and physically drained, unable to handle it anymore, so I collapsed in tears. After about an hour of him continuing to torment me, I called my mom, sobbing uncontrollably at around 2 a.m., begging her to help me and let me come home. I explained what was happening while my ex stood over me in the guest bedroom, his presence looming over me as I sat on the bed. When he realized I was talking to my mom, he quickly changed his demeanor, claiming to her that he was sorry she had to deal with this, stating that I was going through nicotine withdrawal and that I was treating him poorly. Through my sobs, I yelled at him to leave me the hell alone, demanding he go away so I could sleep. At some point, he started recording me on his phone. The situation dragged on as I remained on the phone with my mom while he just stood there watching me cry in the bed. Eventually, I tried moving to the upstairs back deck to speak with my mom without him hovering over me. He followed me, still playing the role of the victim. I continued to yell at him, telling him to get away from me. After a while, he seemed frustrated enough with my shouting to finally leave me alone, saying he'd go somewhere else for a while. He told me he would pack a bag and give me some space to move my things. My mom was still on the line, and he was speaking in a calm, collected tone, pretending as if he'd been rational throughout while I was an emotional wreck. As he packed up his things, my dad woke up, and my mom quickly briefed him on the situation. My dad immediately said he was going to call the police. My ex overheard this, looked at me, and said, "That's crazy," before leaving. About 20 minutes later, he threw his house key at me and left. My parents did end up calling the police, and they arrived 10 to 15 minutes after my ex had left. I spoke with the officers, explaining what happened. They told me that my ex had already called them before my parents even did, right after overhearing my dad's comment about contacting the authorities. He claimed that I had attacked him, hitting him multiple times in the face with both open and closed hands. He told the police I punched him. I showed the officer a red mark on my wrist where he had grabbed me, but the officer said there was no visible injury, and there wasn't enough evidence to warrant removing either of us from the house. He informed me that my ex could return if he wished, as long as we didn't interact. The officer explained that each of us would give statements, and then a court would decide whether charges would be filed. The officer left, and returned with a domestic violence resource pamphlet, and asked me for the key my ex had thrown at me. I handed it over, and he told me that my ex had been sitting just down the street, and would be back in about 30 seconds. He told me to stay in the guest bedroom, and avoid contact with my ex, who would stay on the top floor. I agreed to the arrangement. When my ex returned, I remained in bed, downstairs, still on the phone with my mom. After several hours, my parents decided to come pick me up, so they began heading over. Throughout the night, I stayed on the phone with my mom, trying to sleep, but only managing to doze off for short intervals. The next morning, my ex came downstairs to the area he was supposed to avoid according to the officer's instructions. I overheard him on the phone with a reporting center for adult and child abuse, giving my name and even mentioning my sister's name, talking about violence in our family. Around 20 minutes later, he came downstairs again while I was packing my things. I told him he needed to go back upstairs and leave me alone, but he replied, "Just so you know, I'm filing a PFA against you. I need to know when your parents will arrive so I can notify my attorney." I ignored him, and he went back upstairs. As I continued packing, he came downstairs again while I was in the guest bedroom changing. He pushed the door open, which wasn't fully latched, and once again demanded to know when I would be leaving. I told him to get out, and he could see I was changing. He persisted, telling me I needed to stop coming downstairs, and I repeated my request for him to leave me alone. I needed to know the date he planned to leave so that I could submit the PFA request. Once I submit it, he wouldn't be allowed to stay here. I agreed, and he went upstairs. My parents started talking about how his behavior seemed like an intimidation tactic, and I was left wondering why he claimed to be so scared of me that he needed a protection order. But at the same time, he wasn't afraid to come downstairs repeatedly, walking around aimlessly, while speaking to the reporting center on speakerphone. The whole situation felt like he was trying to provoke me. Eventually, my parents arrived. They had already contacted the police beforehand and requested an officer to meet them at the house since my ex was still there and had free access while I remained locked up in the basement bedroom. When the officer arrived, my ex calmly spoke with him, stating he would leave once we moved my things out. He said the only thing he asked was that we make sure to lock up after leaving. The officer stood outside while we packed all of my belongings. After we finished, I informed the officer that the house was locked. The key was left by the door, and I was heading back to my home state. I then went to my office, where I had already spoken to my supervisor earlier that day. She knew about the situation, and when we met, she reassured me that they understood the abruptness of my departure. They'd be paying out all my sick leave and PTO for the next 4 weeks, and would keep my position available if I decided to return. I thanked her and apologized repeatedly for leaving without notice. It felt terrible leaving such a great job that I had hoped to stay at long term. I felt incredibly supported by them during this tough time. Now, back in my home state with my family, everything feels surreal, like I'm living in a nightmare. It's been the hardest 24 to 48 hours of my life. I'm dreading what's next if my ex goes through with filing the PFA or if his statements lead to charges being filed against me. I have no idea what will happen, but at least I'm out and safe. Now, moving on to the next story. My boyfriend left me after my cancer diagnosis, and years later, I found out he had a fiancée. As a guest speaker at a university event, I realized he was still working as a security guard. When I was 21, I dated a man named Kevin, who was much older than me. He was 37 and an older student in my university program. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship and thought Kevin was a great guy. Looking back, I now see all the red flags, but I was so naive at the time. Kevin and I dated for 6 months. He quickly confessed that he loved me and, after graduation, pushed me aggressively to move to his home city to be with him. It sounded great, but the warning signs were there. However, it wasn't until my final semester that I was diagnosed with cancer, and everything changed. On the day I got my diagnosis, Kevin kissed another woman at a party in front of me, and I left in tears. That night, he broke up with me over email, claiming we weren't compatible anymore due to my medical situation. He admitted he had only been with me out of pity after my previous abusive relationship. He even mentioned that all our friends found me annoying and didn't like me. It felt like a punch to the stomach. I can barely remember anything from that week. I had to drop out mid-semester and take a medical leave from the university. Meanwhile, Kevin kept following me around campus, demanding an explanation for why I wouldn't speak to him and why I hadn't forgiven him. I looked at him like he was crazy. When I asked if he was apologizing for what he did, he said no, but it wasn't fair that I was still angry with him. I told him to leave me alone, focused on my paperwork, and prepared to move back home for what would turn into months of chemotherapy. That period of my life was a nightmare, and I try not to think about it. I became suicidal and was diagnosed with depression, so I started seeing a psychiatrist while undergoing treatment. Most of my friends disappeared because they didn't know how to handle my illness, but a few stuck by me, and I'm grateful for them. They are still my friends today, and some even work with me now. After I left school, Kevin bombarded me with text messages, asking what went wrong and demanding that I forgive him. I was in the middle of more chemotherapy, So I told him I forgave him just to make him leave me alone. As soon as I said I forgave him, he disappeared, and I never heard from him again. I blocked him on Facebook to ensure he couldn't come back later. Then, later that year, between chemotherapy sessions, I ran into a woman I had never met at a university event off campus. She was talking about her fiancé, and when I asked who he was, she said it was Kevin. I was confused because they had only been together a few months, but I remembered how quickly Kevin had confessed his love to me and tried to get me to move in with him. When I asked how long they had been together, she told me, "It's been almost 3 years, and I'm still in disbelief." The whole situation hit me hard, and I've come to the shocking realization that Kevin was having an affair with me. Our entire time together now feels like a lie. I had no clue. I left in a daze, crying in the parking lot. Looking back, I wish I had warned the woman, but I was so stunned at the time. I wasn't interested in stirring up drama at a table full of strangers, and honestly, I was exhausted. I briefly considered finding her on Facebook later, but I didn't know her name. Plus, I feared that telling her could lead to more harassment from Kevin, so I decided against it. The good news, though, is that I'm still here, and I'm happily in remission. 2 years after leaving school, I finally felt like myself again and decided to go back and finish my degree. By that point, I was in a much better place. New friends, completed therapy, and I had started my career. My life is completely different now. I'm well known in my field, and even invited back to my university as a guest of honor. My professors want me to speak to students, and I'll have the chance to network with other prominent alumni in my industry. It's an amazing opportunity that I was really looking forward to. The only problem? I saw Kevin's name on the guest list, along with a woman sharing his last name, whom I'm guessing is now his wife. When I saw this, my stomach dropped. The guest list is small, maybe 50 alumni, so there's a good chance we'll run into each other. I can't skip the event, though. It's too important, and I already promised I'd attend. Plus, I don't want to let fear of running into people from my past stop me from moving forward. How should I handle seeing Kevin again? Do I treat him like a stranger? What if he tries to hug me like we're old friends? I wouldn't put it past him. Also, I'm unsure whether I should say anything to his wife. I really don't want to open that can of worms from my past. I've been losing sleep over this and am unsure how to approach it. Update. Thanks so much for all the advice. I wanted to give you an update. Something I forgot to mention in my last post is that my mom used to teach at my alma mater before she retired. She didn't know about my brief relationship with Kevin years ago. After posting, I decided to tell her everything that happened. When I did, she immediately recognized who I was talking about. Apparently, she used to teach in the same department as Kevin. She then said something that put me at ease. "I don't think Kevin will be an issue for you." When I asked why, she responded, "Trust me, you'll see. That guy's kind of a loser." I went to the event, and it turned out to be amazing. I took some of the advice here and brought a girlfriend along so I wouldn't be alone if Kevin tried to pull anything. I reconnected with some alumni and even caught up with a few people I hadn't spoken to since I got sick. Everyone was thrilled to hear about my progress, and my speech got a standing ovation. Kevin showed up with his wife. I don't mean to sound harsh, but let's just say he's let himself go, he's gained weight, and is balding. I was surprised at how much older he looked until someone told me he's nearly 50 now, which means he lied about his age when we were dating. I also heard from some old classmates that Kevin is still studying for his degree while working nights as a security guard. Surprisingly, Kevin was the only person at the event who avoided me. I thought he'd dodge me all night until, for about 30 seconds, I found myself alone. That's when he nervously approached me to congratulate me. I smiled, said thanks, and kept walking. Later, he tried to crack a dumb joke, but I ignored him, which seemed to frustrate him. I spent the rest of the evening enjoying the company of others, completely forgetting about him. Interestingly, Kevin somehow managed to annoy a lot of people, including his wife and one of the deans, with his insensitive comments. It got so bad that a running joke started about how obnoxious Kevin was. I'm really glad I went and didn't let that one person from my past make me hide. The night was fantastic, and I was shocked by how unafraid I felt when I saw him. Those memories from that time in my life were so painful, but now Kevin just seems like a jerk I once knew. I'm honestly baffled by what I ever saw in him, or why I was so scared of him. Oh, and by the way, I recently started an incredible new job that came with a hefty raise, meaning my student loans will be paid off this year. Life is good. Thanks again for all your help, Reddit. Edit. Two more things I wanted to add. An acquaintance recently told me that Kevin and his current wife were in an open relationship for a long time, including during the time he and I were together. She apparently closed the relationship a few years ago because she got fed up. I can only imagine the chaos. I feel a bit better knowing he didn't cheat on her, even though he still cheated on me. And of course, he never mentioned his wife to me. The best part of the evening? I blocked Kevin on Facebook years ago, so he had no updates about my life, including the fact that I now go by my birth name. In college, everyone called me by a nickname, but no one uses it anymore. All night, he kept calling me by that old nickname, and people were staring at him, confused, asking, "Why are you calling her that?" Kevin got really frustrated when he realized everyone else knew something he didn't, but no one would clue him in. At last, let go of this fool. It's evident that you both are completely different individuals. It's so clear now that the only reason we even ended up together was because I was inexperienced and gullible. Now that I'm nearly 30, he just doesn't make sense to me anymore. It feels strange and unsettling.